Okay, so this is literally the third time I'm recording this video, so I'm going to try and keep it quick. I wanted to start the video by saying thank you so much to the people who have reached out to me over the last 3.5 weeks. Your messages mean a lot, and I appreciate you checking in on how I am. I went from posting like 4 times a day to not posting at all. So I went through a life-changing experience, and if I'm honest, I don't want to share it. Most of me doesn't want to share it, but I feel led to, and I think that there's a reason why I should. I think that it's going to help many people, and especially people in the community that I've built who are dealing with unresolved issues and sickness. So 3 weeks ago I went to an event and I had multiple demons cast out of me. It was completely life-changing. It felt like the most foreign experience, but also like the most comfortable, if that makes sense, afterwards. So I'm just going to tell a little bit of my story, and I'm sure this is not going to be the last time that I speak about it. Yeah, so many of you know that I grew up in South Africa. I think I made a post about this like 6 to 8 weeks ago, saying that growing up in South Africa, witchcraft was like everywhere, like it's integrated into the culture. So for instance, we would have housekeepers who would find dead snakes in the backyard, and it'd just be normal for them to take it home to the Sangoma, which is the local medicine witch doctor, and they would use it to make muti, which is the medicine. I was always a really spiritual child. Like, I had visions and dreams, and I would have premonitions of future events. I saw spirits on multiple occasions, and I think so many of you can probably relate to that in some way. I remember getting to a point around probably like 15 where I was having so many of these spiritual visitations that I remember praying and asking God to close my eyes, to close my spiritual eyes, so I didn't have to see anything anymore, because it became too much. It was like overwhelming, and it was really traumatic. I wasn't taught how to actually deal with it, and I was never taught that I had authority over it either. So I moved to Australia when I was 15. I was invited to a youth group service where I had an amazing encounter with God for the first time in my life. 2 weeks prior, I prayed, and I remember saying to God, like, why am I here? What's my purpose? I was in so much pain, and I had suffered with depression for years. I was self-harming. I had been medicated since I was like 13 or something. Doctors told my parents that like depression ran in the family, so I think I suffered greatly because that was something that was spoken over my life, and there were other things like the holistic practices and methods that I teach my students now that I didn't have access to when I was younger. I believe my life could have been different if I did have access to those. That's why it's really important for me to share that, but that's not the point of this video. So yeah, the encounter with God at the youth group 2 weeks after I prayed that prayer was like some sort of confirmation to me that like it wasn't like this encounter that I had all the answers now. It was just a very small, quiet confirmation that there was something else out there that I hadn't discovered and I hadn't seen yet. And that led me on a journey to creating this community, this friend group, who were just beautiful men and women of God. And I spent the next couple of years with them, and we would go out in Northbridge. I was living in Perth at the time. We would go out in Northbridge at night and just pray for people. We would see healings, we would see people encouraged, and it was really beautiful. Like I felt like I had found my purpose and that we were like really making a difference. I ended up joining a church and I experienced a lot of rejection there. I wasn't living holy and the way that they taught us to live, the way that God teaches us to live. But I never understood the necessity for holiness. I started like going to raves and using drugs and all of that, what I thought was fun stuff. Everyone always told me like these things, sin, would open a door for the devil into your life. And I was always like, what does that mean? Like no one ever sat me down and explained it to me like practically. That was always just a line, like don't sin, it'll open a door. So eventually I was like, whatever, you guys, rebellion entered in, and essentially it was like, well, I'm gonna go my way and I'm gonna find out. And I do believe that I needed to. So I got wrapped up in a whole lot of crazy stuff. I ended up, I was pursuing my music career when I was about 20, and I was doing open mic nights and paid gigs in Perth. I would sell my album after my performances, and I ended up meeting a guy. It was one of those like series of events where you kind of convince yourself like this is meant to be. And a part of me believes that I was like greatly deceived looking back now, but part of me is really grateful for that experience. I spent 6 years with my ex, and although we were just in a whole life of like crime and it was just turmoil and chaos, but I believe that like God used it for good. I can see that now. Many lessons were learnt that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to learn any other way. I've kind of always been the type of personality who goes all in. If I feel that something is right, then I will pursue it with all my heart. Unfortunately, I pursued the wrong thing for a very long time, but that's how we learn. At the end of that 6-year relationship, I suspected at the time, but I couldn't put the pieces together. Now I know for sure that my ex-partner became fully demonically possessed. I lived with him for about 3 weeks after he was possessed, and it was like living with a completely different person. I can go into that in another video in detail, but it was obviously very scary, and again, it was another spiritual experience where I didn't know what to do, and I felt so hopeless and fearful. I was never taught that I had like authority over the demonic realm. I think there's so many instances in my life that I would have played out or approached differently if someone had seriously like discipled me and taught me that I had authority over the spiritual realm as a believer. So that's the part of my story where many of you came in. So I left my ex in Pemberton in WA, and I moved to my 1-bedroom flat in Scarborough. Many of you know that as the beginning of my story, where I moved into black mold and I started getting really, really sick. I'm not discounting black mold contributing to my illness and my symptoms. I am very much aware that there are physical aspects that play into the role of like our illnesses and our mental state. But now more than ever, I understand that there are spiritual aspects as well that we're not taught to address. And that's what this video is about. So I moved to Scarborough. I lived there for a few years, and I think I was so heartbroken because I had to leave the life that I had built for the past 6 years. Now I was all alone. I basically had to fend for myself. I had left the love of my life, and I think there was like a lot of trauma that needed to be worked through. I started practicing in a bid to regain some control. I started practicing witchcraft, and it was very, very deep, very fast. Like I said, I've always been spiritual, and I've always been like in tune with the spiritual realm. But I think the danger of witchcraft and the occult is that they're always waiting at the door. They're always waiting for that open door that I spoke of earlier. They're always waiting to get in, and they need that legal right to be able to access your life and to access you. And I gave them that. I started working with specific spirits. They would actually approach me first. I would have visions and dreams of specific goddesses, and I would essentially petition to work with them, and then we would start the line of communication. Probably sounds really out there to people who haven't had many spiritual experiences, but to those who have had spiritual experiences, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, and especially to those who have been involved in witchcraft or the occult. Things just got bad, went from bad to worse. I was communicating with these spirits like every day, and my health declined, my mental state declined to a point where like I couldn't take my rubbish out. I couldn't cook for myself. Like I was in so much pain in my body that I couldn't stand in the kitchen for 10 minutes and cook. I was ordering food, having like family members bring me food, and I was completely disabled. I was just in bed all day. And the only energy I had was to like go shopping like once a week or once every 2 weeks. And then I was like done. I was trying to, at the time I was running my virtual assistant's business, which many of you on my Facebook profile will know. Yeah, so I can't remember how many years I lived there, but it got to the point where I could no longer take care of myself. I mean, I had a complete mental and physical breakdown. I hadn't brushed my hair in like weeks. And I had to shave my head when I moved from Perth. Like it was really bad. And I was so delusional in thinking like, if I just keep putting effort in and I keep trying, like things will get better. And obviously we have to try, we have to put the work in. But if you're putting effort into the wrong avenues, you're not going to get where you want to be. There's a formula for health and wealth, and I truly believe now more than ever that formula is holiness, and it's being in tune with the living God. These other entities and these other ways, they just bring death and destruction, and I'm living proof of this. So my dad was living on the East Coast at this time, and he offered to buy my flight over to Queensland, and he took care of me for the next 4 years. I lived with him. He bought a property. And it was an amazing time in my life because I was still so sick, but I finally had someone who was speaking life into me. I had like never really had that before. My dad's very positive and he's very like all about mindset and stuff like that. And it was extremely empowering to learn what I learned from him over those 4 years. I believe that like seriously changed my life for the better. And I'm so grateful. At the end of the 4 years, I was still obviously very sick. When I moved over to Queensland, I stopped practicing witchcraft because I was like, I had met a mentor and they basically like invited me to be initiated like into the Satanic Church, and something didn't feel right about that to me, so I declined. But my journey with witchcraft and the occult got to the point where it was no longer just like me having conversations with spirits in my head. They would come into my apartment in the form of like snakes. I had 2 occasions where one occasion was a black python came into my bathroom, like in the vent above my shower, which was like, okay, like maybe maybe that's just like normal or whatever. So I can kind of like shrug that off. And then a couple of weeks later it happened again. My window was open and a completely white snake came through the curtain, and it literally just like looked at me. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning or something, because I would be like awake all night because of the mold. And it came in and just like looked at me and then went out. And I was like, I was so fearful that like I didn't know what to do. So I was like, okay, just like pretend that that didn't happen, right? There's other stories that I can tell, but I'm not going to go into that. I'm just letting you know, if you're involved in the occult and you're involved in witchcraft, I don't care how good it looks. I don't care how much money you're making. I don't care how good you feel. It's not going to last. It's a culture of death. You're literally practicing death. So this is just a warning to get out now. Get out before you lose everything. So I moved to Queensland. I lived with my dad for 4 years. At the end of the 4 years, I'm in so much pain that I like pray to God again. And I'm like, God, thanks for getting me here, but like, I don't think I could do this anymore, because my pain had gotten to the point where, so for those of you who don't know, I had severe pelvic pain, previously diagnosed with endometriosis, and they inserted an IUD. And I spent the next 6 years going to multiple doctors on the West Coast in Perth and on the East Coast, and looking for answers. And they would do pelvic ultrasounds, scans, and couldn't find anything. Told me that the IUD was in place. I had been diagnosed with endometriosis and it had been removed, so they couldn't help me. And I'm not exaggerating, I went to hundreds of doctors, like GPs and specialists. And every time it was just this dead end, and I could never get anywhere. So I vowed not to go to another doctor. And then I prayed this prayer, like, I'm going to end it because I can't deal with this pain anymore. I was having pelvic contractions, like, lasting for like 2 to 3 minutes, 2 minutes apart, for like almost all day, every day. I was in like extreme amounts of pain and I could barely walk. 2 weeks after I prayed that prayer, I was very involved in like the online endometriosis community, and someone had messaged me saying that there's a specialist in Toowoomba who specializes in endometriosis. Go and see them. So I received that recommendation, and at first I was like, I'm not going to do it because I've seen all the specialists and like I'm not going to get anywhere. But I felt this prompting to go, so I said, I've got nothing else available to me right now. Let me go one more time and then I can make a decision from there. So I went. Lovely doctor. And basically, like, they just agreed to do exploratory surgery. That might not seem like revolutionary or anything. You're probably sitting there like, oh, well, obviously they did. Like, you were in pain. They were going to investigate it. I had spent 6 years going to hundreds of doctors, begging for them to do investigative surgery, and each one of them declined me. GPs, gynecologists, specialists, pain specialists, like 6 years. And I go to this doctor and he's like, yeah, like, let's book you in. I think I was booked in probably like 6 to 8 weeks later after my initial appointment. So I was like, okay, like, something's different here. Let me just go for it. So I went through the surgery, got out of surgery, and they had located my IUD, which had been found embedded in the wall of my uterus. So the contractions, the pelvic contractions I was experiencing, was my body trying to get rid of this foreign object. But because it was embedded and stuck in the wall of my uterus, it wasn't able to get rid of it. So hence the pain. Obviously, that was an amazing outcome. And they also found like 2 egg-sized cysts, like, from my fallopian tube, so that would have been like twisting and causing a lot of pain as well. Then you guys, my Facebook community, would know that's when my 18-month journey started. So I got out of surgery and I moved into my tiny home, and I spent the next 18 months focusing on my diet. I lost a ton of weight because I taught myself to walk again, and I could walk every day now. got off all the opioids that I had become super dependent on, because all the doctors I had seen for the previous 6 years just gave me scripts for opioids and would never properly investigate anything. The first few weeks of moving into my tiny home, I had this experience. Yeah, it sounds so crazy. Because I had been through so much with my health, I really wanted to focus, like I said, the next 18 months on just my health. So I would get up, exercise, and literally just like spend time with God and pray and make art all day. I knew that I really needed to find healing both spiritually, emotionally, and physically. So I ended up having this like crazy experience where I was praying one day in my kitchen, and I just felt like the presence of God so strongly, like this love and this like overwhelming peace. And I remember just being like flat on my face, just like bawling. And I saw this like vision of Jesus step into my kitchen, and he was standing in front of me. And I basically I believe that this was my first experience of deliverance, but I didn't know at the time. It wasn't like I was vomiting, but like all this stuff started coming out my mouth onto the floor, which is like really gross. But I was so overwhelmed with like the presence of God and the peace that like I didn't really pay attention to it. But looking back now, I was like, oh, okay, like that's what happened. And I felt this like huge burden just lift off me, and I felt free. So around that time, my dad moved to Melbourne, because obviously I was like, I can walk now and I'm living in my tiny home, so like I'm pretty much good to go. He moved to Melbourne for work, and I didn't have a community here. I didn't know anyone. So I started going to church. I visited a few churches, and I really felt led to go to this one. Started going there, and I built an amazing community. I was going to church on Sundays, and I started going to like a Bible study midweek. And for a few months, it was amazing, and I was like really learning a lot and building community, like connecting with people, which I hadn't done in so long. So it was like really life-changing for me. But it got to the point where I started getting like really sick whenever I'd go to church or to Bible study. And I didn't realize at the time, at the time I thought it was just anxiety, like social anxiety. But within like 6 months, it got to the point where like I would be sitting in church or sitting in Bible study for like 10 minutes, and I would feel this presence come over like from behind me, and I would start getting like black spots in my vision, and I couldn't breathe. It felt like I was being suffocated. So I kept on, you know how it is, right? Like I thought that I just had anxiety, and I had to like push past it, and it's all about mindset or whatever. I just needed to have a drink. Trying to push past it, and I just couldn't. It got so bad that like I used to dread going to Bible study and to church. I was like, I can't do this anymore, so I stopped going. And I basically like fell away from my whole community. I was like isolated again. And it's weird because like it went away. This like, because when you say you feel impending doom, or you feel like a presence, a lot of people go straight to like, oh, it was just a panic attack. But remember, like I've been dealing with mental health issues since I was like very, very young. and I know what a panic attack feels like. It wasn't even similar in any way when you have like a experience with a spirit versus like a mental health episode. So I knew it wasn't a panic attack, and it was really interesting to me that when I stepped away from church and I stopped going, these episodes would stop. They would only ever happen if I was in church or in home group studying the Bible. So silly me, I don't put two and two together. I'm like still thinking it's probably anxiety, right? Which I look back now and that like sounds so stupid. I really like I guess I did put two and two together, but I wasn't educated enough to like come to the conclusion that that was actually possible. I always like double guess myself and second guess myself. When I was still going to church, I approached some of the people in my church and I was like, hey, I think there's a possibility that like something demonic's going on. And they were like, oh no, you're a Christian, like you can't have a demon. You can be like oppressed, but you can't be possessed. So I was like, okay, cool, like I'm off the hook. Not possessed. Amazing. So I continued to like gaslight myself about that. I ended up leaving the church, and then probably 6 or 7 months I was just like alone in my house. I was focusing like on my business and stuff. And I started going to another church that was like much smaller, far less people, not as loud, like didn't have a band and stuff. So I was like, surely if it's an anxiety, this church is not going to make me anxious, because there's like nothing to make me anxious there, right? But again, like a couple months later, I start getting these symptoms again, this like extreme kind of anxiety feeling, and I start blacking out in my vision. Around that time, I had my endometriosis was under control up until that time, but I started getting pain with my monthly cycle. And it's so funny because the extreme pain would always fall on the days that I had to go to church. Just like probably should have been a red flag. But I was like, maybe it's because like I'm eating more carbs or whatever. So I transitioned back to my all steak diet because I was like, that's definitely gonna be good, and that's been great for me. So I left that second church, and I really just spent lots of time in prayer. I always knew that there was like, I believe that God was revealing things to me, but because I always second guess myself, I took like way longer to learn the lesson than I should have, because I didn't trust myself, and like essentially like I didn't trust God. So I remember praying this prayer, and it was, God, I trust you. Well, help me trust you, because I feel like I don't trust you in all things. And if you really are the creator of the world and you really love us, please reveal yourself. And if it is your will, please open my spiritual eyes again. I did mention that when I was younger, I prayed for my spiritual eyes to be closed because I couldn't handle like all the encounters that I had. And I said to God, like, I think I'm ready again to start exploring this, but please be gentle. Like, please, let's go slow. And my eyes were opened. The experiences that I've had in the past 6 months have forever changed my life, and I've seen I've seen things that I can't deny anymore. And part of me really just wants to stick my head in the sand and pretend like it didn't happen. Because we know with great power comes great responsibility, right? But I prayed it because I have been seeking the truth for so long. I really desire to know God, to know who He is, and to be able to love others as Christ loved us. That's always been on my heart. So after I prayed this prayer, probably like a week later, a few days later, I started to have these spiritual encounters. So I would see people manifest just in daily life. Like I'd be in the shop, or I'd be like speaking with someone and their face would change. And I'd be like, okay, like, did y'all see that? And like everyone else is just acting like normal. So I'm like, okay. I'm just gonna like put that in the folder in the back of my head, because like I'm still gaslighting myself after I've like asked God to show me the truth. This happens multiple times. I would be walking into shopping centers and people will literally start manifesting to the point where like they are looking at me, like screaming at me in the middle of like Grand Central in Toowoomba shopping center, and would like run towards me and try and like bowl me over. And I'd literally just like sidestep. And it was like they couldn't come within like a certain range of me. So I was like, okay, this is getting like really interesting. I was like freaked out, but it's still really interesting. So I'm at my friend's place one day and we're doing a Bible study on Revelation 21. And I go outside, I step outside the front door to give his dog a treat. And I step onto the front porch and I look up into the front yard. And there's like this man standing there. But it was so dark that this figure was darker than like the darkness, than the shadows. So I'm like trying to work this out in like the few seconds that I have. It was a figure of a man with no identifiable features. 6 foot, like just staring at me. Like you could feel, it's like when someone stares at you with like absolute hatred. So I'm like, okay. And I call out to my friend. I'm like, hey, there's someone in the front yard. And my friend gets up and he's Christian. And he grabs his sword and he runs out. And this, just before like he got to the door, this figure, it was like the craziest thing I've ever seen out of like most of my encounters. This figure goes to run to the right, my left, and literally turns into like a whole lot of just black smoke, and then turns into a black dog, and then it kind of just like the smoke dissipates and it disappears. So I'm just standing there like, okay. Like that literally just happened. So this is not a case of like this happening one time and it's like maybe questionable. Like I was questioning my anxiety. This has been the past 2 years with multiple instances that I've needed to be able to prove to myself that this is the truth. like whether you like it or not, everything is spiritual. Whether you like it or not, everything revolves around the God of the Bible. The Bible is real. Jesus is real. He's coming back. And I mean, the people here on my Facebook who knew me in person in like the wildest times in my life, I wouldn't have wanted to confess to this, right? The amount of responsibility that comes with something like this, when you know that this is the truth, is huge. This is life-changing. I haven't actually gotten to the good part yet. So I'm having all these interesting things happen, and I'm like, okay, I'm just trying to get by day, and also just like work on my business and do like normal day things, like keep brushing my hair, keep brushing my teeth. Like, there's demons everywhere. Okay, cool. I start to have like all these snake dreams where like snakes are coming in my house, and I'm looking outside my house and there's like snakes everywhere. And I realize now, looking back, that those were prophetic dreams that God had sent me to show me there's demons somewhere and you need to address it. But I didn't know at the time. I think it's so beautiful that like God knows what we can handle, and he's so patient and he's so gentle with us, because he knows, like, if I were to have had these experiences within the space of like 3 months, I probably would have I would not have handled it well. All we can do is keep our heart right and keep seeking the truth. We live in surrender and God does the rest. So I start looking into deliverance, and because I really I had felt for ages that God was like preparing me for something. And I started coming across these videos on like my Instagram and my TikTok of this pastor doing deliverance. And I'm sure like other people have seen them as well. You always read the comments and people are like, have you guys hired actors or something? Because this seems fake. Like, surely this is not real. And I was very skeptical. I was like, I don't know if this is real. Like, this is like pretty full on. We don't want to, again, like, it's a responsibility thing. We don't want to confess that it's real or even think about the possibility of it being real, because it changes everything. So, well, it doesn't need to. Like, once you know the truth, you have a choice to carry on as normal, or you have a choice to accept that responsibility and to change and live according to that new truth. Excuse me. So I was seeing this specific pastor's videos, and I felt like I could tell the power that he carried, and I was like, if anyone ever did deliverance on me, like, I would love this guy too, because like I know that if anyone could find, if there was like something in me, it would be this dude. So I prayed about it, and looking back again, I can understand that God was preparing my heart, because it was almost like he told me, this is the dude. But because the guy's in America, I was like, I was thinking, like, I'm never going to get to America. That's never going to happen. I'm going to have to find someone here in Australia. And I kept on praying about it. And like a few months later, I saw this guy's coming to Australia. He's coming to Gold Coast. So I was like, this is getting like really crazy now. So I booked tickets. Like, his events are free. So all I had to organise was like an Airbnb, because it was in the Gold Coast. That's like 2+ hours from me. So there's like a bit of planning that goes into it. It was a 2-day event. Had to book an Airbnb and get there and everything. I actually took a friend with me because I was like, if something happens, like, I'm going to need some moral support. But I'm just going to go and see, and it's probably just going to be another Christian conference, right? It's going to be like, you get there, you get prayed for, you feel the Holy Spirit, la-di-da. It's going to be like amazing, and everything's going to feel amazing, and then you just go back home. Yeah, I was wrong about that, but I will get to that. So I booked tickets, and my prayer was, I had 2 prayers, and I had been discussing this with my friend for like weeks. I was like, all of this stuff has happened, and I've literally like seen spirits, I've had all these encounters and stuff, but I'm still gaslighting myself. I can't trust myself that this is like real. So I'm praying. My first prayer is like, I will believe that all of this is real and that I'm not completely insane if I see someone going through deliverance in front of me. Like, I need to see it in real life, not on the internet, not in my TikTok reels. My second prayer was, I will believe if I go through deliverance. And again, it's like really amazing what happens when we're just honest with God. I think we go through our lives and we try and like hide our unbelief from God. We try and like, in God's presence, we try and be this like perfect Christian. And then like we go away and we live our lives of sin, but we don't realize like God sees everything. Like he knows what's going on in your head. Like, if you're like, I feel insane and I don't trust you, God, I don't trust all of this that's happening, and I don't trust the future you have for me, and I don't trust what you're preparing me for. He's like, yeah, I know. It's like, that's why I'm preparing you. So it's like so silly. So it was a 2-day event, and we got there the first. This is actually like the heavy part, and I'm already like 50 minutes in. We got there, and the first evening was like a 5-hour session. We went in. Apostle Daniel is the deliverance minister. He does a really amazing sermon. He speaks about faith. We had like worship at the beginning of the session. And then he says this prayer, and there's probably about like 350 people, more or less, in the room. And people just start screaming in the crowd. It's like someone screams in a shopping center. It's like, okay, I'm alerted, but like I don't feel very like unsafe. When you have like 10 to 15 people screaming like at a time, it's like, okay, like I don't feel physically unsafe because I know that I'm safe, but like spiritually I feel unsafe. So I just look at my friend and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is insane. We go through the night and he pulls people up from the crowd who have started manifesting, and he casts demons out of them. I'm like 10 rows from the front, like I'm seeing it in real life. And it's real. So I go home that night and I'm like, okay, this is like really crazy, and this changes everything because this is what I prayed for. And God has shown me that this is real. Like, that was my first prayers, to see this stuff in person. So I left with like more questions than I came in with, but I think my pride was also like, well, at least I didn't manifest, you know? Like, we were trying to pick like the ones, it sounds bad, but like my friend and I, like, who's gonna go next? Like, we were trying to make a joke out of it because it was like kind of traumatic. And then I got home and I was like, well, if I had a demon, then obviously it would have come out on the first night. So I wake up the second day, and the second day was 2 sessions. So they had the morning session, which they called pre-council, which the people who had tickets, who had booked that session, had the ability to meet with Daniel's team, and to go through like what we wanted prayer for, like what kind of breakthrough we wanted in our life. And we were given this big piece of paper, and we put like a few words on with what we wanted prayer for, like whether it be like sickness or mental issues, or like if you needed healing for like a family member. So that morning I woke up, and I think I was like day 4 or something of my period, which like I shouldn't be having any pain, even though I had pain like a few months prior. I woke up in so much pain, like I could barely walk. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. It's like day 4, I shouldn't be in pain at all. Like, maybe there's something wrong. And I said to my friend, like, I don't think I'm going to make it, because like I can't walk, I can't get ready. And then in the back of my mind, it's like, something's trying to keep you from going. So I'm like, okay, well, we drove all the way here. I'm just going to try and get there. And like, if I have a breakdown, then I'm just going to have a breakdown. But I've got to get myself there. So I go there, and like, I was in pain, but it kind of like subsided by the time I got to the church. So I got through the morning session. It was like probably like 3 hours or something. And I met with 2 members of Daniel's team, lovely people, a man and a woman. And I was like, I don't really know. Like, I've been through a whole health journey, as you guys know. Like, I've healed a lot. But I think, like, my main thing is, like, my endometriosis. Because my pain had started coming back. I'm like, if I can just get rid of my pain again, then I can be back to, like, 100% like I was. So the lady wrote endometriosis. And she's like, well, if you have endo, then there's obviously, like, we tend to see a lot of emotional trauma with that. So I was like, okay, cool. And she wrote emotional trauma under the endometriosis, like on the piece of paper. So I was like, okay, whatever. We've probably all got emotional trauma. That's cool. So we got ready for the evening session, and it was actually like, pain-wise, I was feeling like pretty good. We ended up having to like line up outside for like an hour, and like my pain level wasn't too high, which is quite interesting. We went in again, we did like praise and worship, music. Apostle Daniel did a sermon, a message. And then they did the miracle line, where like everyone in the room lines up and they all get prayed for. So the people who had gone to the pre-council, the morning session, and got their pieces of paper, they went first. And my friend and I went like, I think we were literally like the 3rd to last row of the people, like the first group with the papers. So we sat and watched like most of what happened, and people were like manifesting, getting prayed for. Like, it was at one time it was like really, really crazy. But it's amazing, like you're seeing people get healed in real time. Like, they're right there at the front of the room getting healed of things that they've been dealing with for like 40 years or whatever. So it was funny because just before we got up to line up to go and get prayed for, I started to feel like super nauseous. And I was like, there were multiple points where I was like, I'm going to need to run to the bathroom because I'm like actually going to vomit. And I was just like praying through it and stuff, because I thought it was just my health or like anxiety or whatever. It wasn't anxiety. So we line up and like my pain starts again. And I'm like standing in the line, like I'm gonna have to go and sit down because I like almost can't stand. So we basically get to the front row, like the row of people at the front who are going to be prayed for. And as Apostle Daniel steps in front of me, it's really hard to explain, but the only way that I can explain it so that you can understand is it felt like I took a step back in my consciousness, and it felt like something else took over. So I was still there and I was still experiencing my reality, but I wasn't like fully in control anymore. So he said a few things, and then he got to the part where he prayed for me, and he put his hand on my head and he was praying. He prayed for endometriosis to be healed. And then he started commanding an evil spirit that had been attacking my health to leave me. And as soon as he said that, I felt this thing jump up from the base of my spine all the way up my spine to my neck, and it just started like shaking me like back and forth, and like I wasn't in control anymore. Again, I was there, but it was like I was in the back seat and someone else was driving. He was commanding it to come out, and I think because there were so many people and he still had to pray for many people, he asked his team member Crystal to take me aside and to pray for me and to get it out. Like, he specifically said, I'll show you guys the video. He said, I don't want you leaving with this. So he had identified there was something there. It was an evil spirit and he wanted to get it out, but he knew that would take time. So Crystal took me to the side. You'll see in the video, I'm just like I'm almost not there. Like, I'm almost completely dissociated. But like I was telling my friend the other day, it wasn't dissociation, it was something far more violent. I've experienced dissociation on like multiple occasions. That's actually one of the things that I experience when I'm now, after my detox, exposed to mold in an environment. If I go into a shop, I'll experience like this level of dissociation. So I'm very familiar with that. It wasn't dissociation at all. It was someone shoving me into the back seat of the car of my consciousness and grabbing the wheel and going for a drive. So Crystal takes me aside and she starts praying, and it's just amazing the things that she's praying about. She's addressing things like generational curses. I won't go into detail, but the things that she said is like she knew stuff about my family that like she could never have known. I had never spoken to her and I had never met her. It's funny because like initially I thought that she was like the PR lady. Like the first night I had seen her running around like on the phone and stuff. She's obviously like she's part of the team, but I thought that she was like the main organizer. And here she is like praying for me with like all this authority, and like I could feel this thing's like not happy with her, so she's doing something right. She addressed all this stuff, all these word curses that were spoken over me. Like there were multiple things and multiple spirits that she commanded to leave. And then this thing was like violently like writhing me back and forth, like shaking my body. And I got to the point where I was just crying because I was like, this is not fun. Like we have a serious problem here. And I didn't know what to do because, again, like I've never been taught what to do. And you just don't know what to do. You see videos of it, but when it's happening to you, it's like, can this just stop, please? So she gets to the point where like this thing's not really, it's not coming out. And it's getting really violent. And then she said like, have you ever been involved in the occult? And it was like, I wouldn't usually speak about this. This has like always been like my secret thing. Like I can't tell people because they think that I'm like not all there. It's hard to understand all of my experiences and stuff if you haven't had similar experiences. So I was like, yes. It felt like standing on hot coals where you just like, you confess just to get it over with. I was like, yes. And then I confessed to like all this stuff. So I was involved in like Ouija boards, tarot cards, palm reading, like divination, speaking with spirits. The whole lot. And I could feel when she started praying about that, like breaking the curses that had brought into my life, this thing was getting really mad. And this is a pivotal point of the whole story. So it's an incredible experience because you have your voice, like during this process of manifesting. You can hear your voice, you can hear the voice of the Spirit, and you can hear the voice of God. And it's like God enters the chat. I hear this voice from behind me on the left. And I want to always say that it's a voice that I've never heard before, because it was like almost audible. And it told me I was still holding my endometriosis paper at this point. It said, drop the paper. And immediately this voice came from the right saying, if you drop the paper, everyone in the room is going to know and you're going to be exposed. Sorry, my dog's scratching. You're going to be exposed and everyone's going to know everything about you, and you're going to be seen like as you are, like in a negative way. It was like a negative connotation. If someone was to see me, then they wouldn't approve, or they wouldn't agree, or they wouldn't like me. There was some fear there. So I held on to it until this voice said it like 3 times. And on the 3rd time I was like, okay, I can't handle this anymore, so I'm just going to drop it. I dropped the paper. And this thing shook me left to right, back and forth. And I was pushed onto the ground, like onto my bum, with such force that like it makes no sense to me physically. And as I was pushed to the ground, before I hit the ground, I felt this huge thing come out of my chest. And it's so interesting because I always wondered Like when someone goes through deliverance, like how do they know that the spirit's left? And you know because you can physically feel it. I was sitting there and it felt like 80% of my body had been removed. Like that's how light I felt. And I just obviously burst into tears, and I was just like, thank you, Jesus. And I'm not, anyone who knows me, like I'm not one of those like flamboyant, like happy clappy Christians, like thank you, Jesus, and glory to God and amen. I'm very like reserved. That night I became a very flamboyant Christian. So Crystal helped me up and I thanked her. And she went back to like pray for other people. And I walked to the back of the room with my friend. Like my friend was standing there the whole time praying for me. And we both just burst into tears. Like, what just happened? And I've never felt so free. I kept on saying like I feel like I'm 10 years old again, but I don't even think that I felt that free at 10 years old. I felt like this weight had been lifted, but it was so much more than that. It was like a rebirth in a way. So I went downstairs and they had like a camera where they film your testimony, and I gave my testimony, and they asked me, there was a lot that was addressed in my deliverance. So I believe that multiple spirits came out, but the main one was the Python spirit. So that's the spirit of divination, and I believe that that enters through the occult. Excuse me. So a lot of what I will address going forward is the dangers of the occult. Obviously there's much more to speak about, but that was just my experience from that night. So I gave my testimony, and I'll try and find that video as well for anyone who wants to watch it. And I realized after like sitting there waiting to do my testimony, like I've always had pain and a very like a tightness in my hips. So it always felt like really difficult to walk. And many of you won't know that I was actually born with dislocated hips. So I spent the first 6 years of my life in plaster of Paris. And I basically like had to crawl the first 6 years of my life. Had like multiple operations up until 6 years old. So my hips have always been like a problem. And this was like the first time where my hips felt free. And I'm like wondering, yeah, I wonder a lot after this experience. I really wanted to share this with you guys. It's really important. I know there's going to be mixed opinions, and some of you will get it, some of you won't. I believe that the people who understand it are at the point where they are ready to understand it. But I do believe that regardless of whether you understand it or you don't understand it, I believe that God's calling you to the kingdom. When Jesus was on the earth, he didn't speak about himself. He spoke about the kingdom, like the coming kingdom. Jesus is coming back to establish God's kingdom on earth, and it's going to be beautiful. We've each got a role to play in that. And I mean, 6 months ago, this was all still like, oh, okay, like maybe the Bible's not real, or maybe it's a story that someone wrote on DMT or whatever. I can tell you, like, for sure, this is real. Like, everything in the Bible is real. The spiritual war is real. Demons are real. Angels are real. God the Father is real, and Jesus the Son is real. And he's coming back, and we need to be prepared. Jesus didn't come to save you so that you can play church every Sunday and then go back to normal life during the week. He actually came to save you, to take you through a process of sanctification where he makes you holy, where he makes you just like him, sinless, blameless, holy and pure. I had been praying for many months about the fear of the Lord. I always hear Christians speak about the fear of the Lord, and I always thought there was like actual fear associated with that, but I've come to understand after praying about it, and again like a week later God reveals it to me. The fear of the Lord is like a deep reverence for God. It's an understanding that like he is so far above us, and he's so holy, and he's so good, and he's so righteous that we can't help but to revere him and to like deeply respect him. And I've also come to understand that like I've been a Christian since I was 15, but I was stuck in like so much sin, and I thought that was okay because it's like that's just part of life. Like we sin, which is very truthful to a point, but we need to be pursuing holiness. And this is the first time in my life since my deliverance where I understand this is why. People kept saying to me when I was 16, like, if you are stuck in habitual sin, that's sin that you do over and over again without repentance, that you will open doors. And now I know what that means. Opening doors is you literally opening your soul for a demonic entity to enter into your life and to oppress you. So I know this has been a lot. It's been over an hour, which I wasn't planning for, but again, it's really important. So thank you for letting me share, and thank you if you got this far. God has a plan for you. Even if you don't believe it, you can confess that to him because he already knows. Pray about it. Ask him to reveal his plan for you. Moving forward, I'm at the point where I've created this beautiful community who I'm teaching about detox and how to heal from chronic illness. And I haven't had much clarity on like how to move forward with that because I'm at the point in my life where I only want things if God has ordained it. And I'm not going to move forward with anything unless I have like a full peace around it. There's been so many other stories, guys, like just in the past 3 weeks, I've been like so blessed. Spent so many years like chasing like financial abundance, and there's like a whole story there as well, but so much has come together in the past 3 weeks just after my deliverance and after like literally finally surrendering to God. And I'll share that at another point as well. I'm not sure at this time what's going to happen to the community, but I'm guessing that I'm going to integrate the spiritual detox into what I'm already teaching with the natural detox. I know that there's like many of my students who are suffering, and I truly believe that this spiritual thing is real. I want to put it out there. I want to be available for you guys to help you if you are going through anything. I believe that this message and this truth is gonna set so many people free, because the people who have even been to church and tried to seek help with people who maybe don't even believe in demonization, that's taught more often than you know in many churches. God sees you, and he doesn't want you to go and be left for the next 40 years without deliverance. So please pray about it. Reach out to me. I'm happy to pray with you. Yeah, he's got a plan for you. He's got a plan for all of us, and it's a really beautiful and amazing plan. It's one that we think about our wildest dreams and the things that we're working towards, and they're like not even 1% of the plan that he has for us. And the Bible speaks about that too. Plans to prosper and not to harm you, the Bible says. So I will leave you with that. Thanks for listening, and I'm sure I will chat to some of you soon.